Welcome to Awakening, the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christian Strang, and today we have a very special episode and a very special guest. I am so excited to have her on with us. She is a long time dear sister on the path. We are introducing you all today to Debbie Palmer Mack. Now, Debbie and I met years and years ago through Facebook, and we bonded over our shared experience of having been in the Jehovah's Witness religion and subsequently awakening out of that religious structure. So Deb is an absolutely multidimensional, incredible being of the light. I'm going to give you her bio so you can get a feel for her energy, and then we'll bring her on. So if you ask Debbie what she does for a living, she will tell you that she loves people. An active lover, a positivist, and peace aficionado, Debbie began the journey of remembering her spiritual nature in 2010 after being hit by a car while jaywalking. Since then, she has devoted her time to regaining her healing abilities, supporting others through their own spiritual awakenings, and encouraging those she loves to live a divinely inspired life. A metaphysician and certified Reiki master in both the Usui and angelic modalities, Debbie has served as a certified spiritual healer, oneness blessing giver, and a prayer partner at Unity of Houston. She's completing her studies to be a licensed spiritual teacher with the option to progress to ministry thereafter. She is the voice behind the online space Viva Divine, which is how I met her, which encourages living the divine life. Her side gig, which is what she calls her secular work, lies in leadership, learning, and development for over 23 years. Deb, I am so happy to have you on Awakening the podcast. Welcome.
Oh my goodness, what a joy. It's been long overdue. I am so happy to be here.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, some of the conversations we've had over the years, I have thought we need to do a podcast. And so here we are. You know, on Awakening the podcast, we are talking about awakening as more than just a one-time event. You know, you and I have had many awakenings in our journey, and we'd love for you to share with our listeners about one or more of your awakenings that were really impactful for you or you feel called to share. Because again, we really want to highlight that awakening is not a one-time event, and it looks very different and manifests in a lot of different ways for us, but all of it is to support us, as you know, and as you live, so that we can live divinely led, or what I call spirit led. So tell us a little bit about what's on your heart here around awakenings and sharing more of your story.
Well, you know, I will agree with you that I think there are so many different layers to awakening, right? I think some of us may have like a kickoff moment, right? That starts the whole process. And you mentioned that, you know, it's in my bio that I got hit by that car in 2010. But, you know, that was just the beginning of life unraveling. I would say that my desire for happiness is what really kind of created a crescendo for my life to unravel and end up on a day, I think about 2013, in the end of the year, where I felt happiness for the first time. You know, and from that space, I had this expression of wanting to serve others. If I could help one person feel what I was feeling, I would dedicate my life to that. And what resulted from that expression was actually a 7-hour long transcendental experience where I had to choose between doing it from the ego's perspective or from spirit's perspective. And I chose ego. Sorry, no, I did not. I chose spirit. Obviously. and the interesting thing is, I think that moment I had multiple awareness openings from that moment. That willingness put me in different spaces to see more, to do more, to sit with people, to sit with teachers, to sit with studies that only helped me open up more, you know? So there are just different aspects in my life. I don't live in the past as much to remember, it seems, but those were the touchstones that have brought me here. The accident and the resulting feeling of happiness and the expression of helping and my spirit guides showing up and teaching me everything on the path. I have been very surrendered. I would say maybe 95%, 5% very resistant. And they were very, very patient with me. But I do know that the awakenings happen the more you're surrendered to the overarching goal of serving humanity and helping raise the conscious of our beautiful planet.
Love that. So to put it in context for listeners, so 2010, the quote unquote accident happens. And are you injured in that process, like very badly? Tell me a little bit about what starts opening you up from that experience.
What happened actually was I suffered from depression for 20 plus years. And my way to alleviate that was to go shopping. And so I was going shopping that day, and I was crossing the street to go to the mall, and I noticed an SUV coming my direction at a very high rate. And I thought I could do the superhero move and kind of like, who's going to pass me? No, he clipped me, right? Just enough for me to fall into the street. And so I ended up with a small contusion. But in my recovery period from the shock of falling, that was when I had this moment of assessing my life and looking at the things in my life that I didn't really like. And I was really unhappy. And I just wanted to be happy. And so I expressed to the universe, I have a way of expressing things that seem to show up. And I just said, I just want to be happy. And in a revolution of 1 year, my marriage, my 15-year career in aviation, and my religious background all started to crumble.
Wow, chills.
Yeah, at one time. And so I just went with it. I just trusted what was happening. And I started reading about spiritual awakening. I didn't know what was happening to me. I started meditating. I didn't know how to meditate. I just thought, I'm just going to sit here, breathe, and try and clear my mind. And then it took about 3 years for that moment in the morning when I woke up and I felt this euphoric sense in my beingness of happiness that I maybe had felt when I was a child, but I could feel it. It was so real. And if you can imagine, at the time I was 42. I'm a 42-year-old woman hipping like a child in downtown Houston. That's how happy I was. Yeah, so the accident was the beginning. I think I may have had maybe some wake-up calls prior. I know I was depressed so much once that I actually was sitting on the bed considering suicide. And I was going to call the bluff of the divine. And I said, I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to do this. And in my right ear, I heard, if you do this, you won't know. And I did not commit suicide that day. So I probably had some tiny awakening moments, but I was not aware of them. But the accident definitely got my attention and made me sit down and look at my life and assess it and think, I don't like this. And I think I should feel differently in my life. This is not my life. That's what it felt like. This is not me. I don't have a miserable marriage. I love my job, but I'm growing it. And this religion thing, it's weird. It's just weird. I don't belong here, right? So it was just thinking of those 3 aspects of my life and just saying, I don't know how to get out of this, but I just don't want this anymore. And I think, a combination of my heartfelt desire, the divine meeting that, just a strange phone call from work one day where everything just started to unravel little by little by little. And I was out of a job, out of my marriage, out of my religion by the summer of 2011. Yeah. And stepping into a whole bold new world that I was actually afraid of, which is why I ended up back in Jehovah's Witnesses, because, I thought it would be safe, but I was stepping out of that. And so I just opened up and just took a leap of faith. And here I am talking to you.
I love this so much, Deb, and I really want to highlight this for folks because this is really powerful. So you may or may not know, I had something similar in that in 2007, I got diagnosed with a tumor. I got really sick, and that was really the catalyst for me. But you and I both had a similar moment that after I had that experience, I was like, this is not my life, and this is not okay with me. And I said out loud to the universe, I just want to be spirit led. So you said out loud, I want to be happy. Like, this isn't working for me, right? So I really want to highlight this to folks that when this major event, I'm using air quotes, you can't see me right now, but I'm using air quotes, this major crisis happens, it is really the invitation to do what Deb did. She went deeper to investigate, wait, this life isn't even working for me. And then we give permission, because Deb said, I just want to be happy. I said, I just want to be spirit led. I didn't even know what those words meant, but it was that energy of like, this has to change. And then I had a similar thing, Deb, that within a year of me saying that, everything that I had been doing crashed, burned, the relationship I was in, the work I was doing, same. So this is one of the reasons why, folks will stay in marriages that don't serve them. They'll stay in relationships that don't serve them. They stay in work. They stay in religions that don't serve them, because they're like so afraid of those tower moments. But I want to open it up to you here. I felt so liberated when those things started happening. I was like, yes, this is what I need. And I never would have been the one to take the action to do those things. It really was me surrendering to that higher power from that place of devastation and desperation that started moving things. How did you do in that year when everything started falling apart? How are you feeling? What was that like for you?
Do you know, it was the most interesting thing, because remember, I had been depressed for 20 something years, right? And when I was going through I call it the recalibration of my life,
Yes,
I was not depressed
that's
anymore.
right. That's right.
Yes, within a year of leaving all of that behind, I stopped taking my depression medication. I was no longer feeling a depressed state of being. Everything just started shifting. And I give a lot of credit to developing a practice of meditation,
Yes.
because I think, definitely my thought processes, that was creating the sensation and the experience of depression. So as I was rewiring my mind and my brain, those thoughts were being replaced by a lot of more positive information. And so that definitely shifted my depression. And I have not been depressed since. If anything, I've been like super whatever that word is, insanely happy and at peace. Sure, I've had moments where I had to do some deeper work, but that depressed state, it never returned. There was a sense of liberation and freedom and excitement about, I don't know what this journey will look like, but it definitely will not be what it was before.
Yes.
Right. So I was very, very open to the unknown and a sense of trust, because I discovered that there is a guidance, right, that's around us all the time. And if I would just trust and listen, then I can't make a mistake. The only time I can go left is when I don't listen, or when I'm resistant to the guidance. And so I learned that pretty early on, being resistant and saying, I'm not going to do that, dude. Sorry. No, ain't happening. And I could feel their presence pull away, just kind of like on the perimeter, right? And then I could really feel them not there. And I said, okay, I hear you. I will listen. I will do this assignment with this person, even though I don't want to. Turns out those assignments, even though they were hard, were for my own growth, right? So it's this ongoing, I call it like the light, you'll know this term, the light gets brighter.
Oh, girl.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
It really does. It really does when we surrender to our divine nature. That's really what we're doing.
Yes.
And letting that be the navigating force in our lives.
So I want to thank you so much for that, Deb. And I really want to highlight here that after you had that statement, I want to feel happiness, you started meditating, then you woke up in 2013 and had that transcendental experience of feeling pure bliss, skipping in the streets of Houston, no less. And then following that was this desire to serve. which I really love that you're sharing this in this way. And then from that, your spirit guides started coming to you. Can you tell me a little bit, or tell the audience too, a little bit about what that was like? I've talked about this a lot in earlier interviews I've done just for myself, but can you talk about what that experience was like, connecting with your spirit guides? Because you were in that daily meditation practice, and that is really what allows you to connect to the higher frequencies. So I'd love to hear if you feel called to share a little bit more about that.
Sure. The spirit guides showed up that same night after I said I wanted to serve, right? So
Amazing.
so there were two groups, right? The first group wanted to take me to quote unquote Satan, which is really the ego,
Yes.
right? And I said, no, we're not doing that, right? They took me back home. And when I came home and I stepped into my foyer, so it's really an out of body experience.
Yeah.
But I stepped back into my foyer and I looked up, and there were three beings at the top of my stairs, beautiful chakra colored, flowing down, so tall I could not see the top of their heads. And I instantly knew who they were. And I said, okay, guys, I get it. I know who you are. You're responding to what I said the night before. Wonderful. Please be gentle with me and don't scare me. And so, I didn't really understand the spirit guide thing until I met an intuitive who basically explained what my whole 7-hour experience was about. She said, you're basically ascending. To which I said, I'm doing what? Again. And she said, those were your guides.
Yeah.
And they're very, very excited that you have accepted the assignment. And I know that I have had one prime male energy guide who really has taught me to do things properly. And I'll give you an example. This particular guide would teach me how to properly have out-of-body experiences, right? This particular guide would show up when I was very distraught, especially when I had to surrender my family to, the religious shunning. They showed up during that emotional time. I also had a feminine energy guide that would calm me down and just, soothe me whenever I was having a struggle with being here and not wanting to be here.
Yes.
So what that's like. Whole feeling the whole world, and you realize how insane it is, and why are you here, and who would ever want to be? Yeah, that kind of stuff. So they would show up for things like that. They're very, very interactive. They have given me reprieve when things have gotten really intense. Sometimes they've actually come and taken me out of my body and taken me to get like a mini vacation off planet. I know this sounds so out of world, like otherworldly, but it's real.
Yes.
They would specifically tell me what I'm working on. Like, you're here to help shift the energy. You really don't have to say too much, Debbie, which, over time I learned to just shut up a little bit. You just have to open up to hold the divinity, your God self in your body, and just show up for people. If there are things that you need to share, you will know. So they've been very instrumental, very loving, very gentle with me, because, that religious indoctrination is so deeply entrenched that there is a natural inclination for me to fight it, to fight against anything spiritual. So they have to be gentle in moving me through things, so I'm not drumming up my fear.
Yes.
So they're very gentle, they're very kind, they're very loving. And they're sitting with me right now as I'm having this conversation, because I can sense them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And there's just so much power in what you're sharing here. And the fact that you saw very clearly that there were guides that are not of the light, and then there are guides of the light, is something that, I had to learn in my own sort of bumpy way on my path. But what is really important, and I highlight this extensively, so you all have heard me talk about this, it's so important that if you want to connect with your spirit guides, for those that are listening to this and they're like, oh, I want to connect more with my guides, it's important that it's your guides of the highest light. There are many different dimensions of consciousness, very many different beings of all different dimensions, just like there are humans of all different dimensions of consciousness. So Deb, I love that you were given that choice like so clearly, because we all are given that choice. Will we choose the light or will we not choose the light? And it's so important that if you're ever communicating or connecting with non-physical energy, that you affirm and declare that it is energy that is of the highest light.
I agree. And I just got this little tap on the shoulder to remind your users also that when you do encounter those that are not of the highest light, and you will know because their frequency is different,
Yes.
that you also affirm to them your stance.
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Yes, I've had quite a few interactions where other, frequencies will come in, and I become aware, and I will just say, I know you're here, but I just want you to know that I'm only connected from here and to source and nothing in between.
That's right. Beautiful.
Right. And
Beautiful.
that has and they respect that. They have
That's
to
right.
respect that. Yeah.
That's right. Because it's
Yeah.
all consent based.
Yeah.
And that was something I didn't know. And I didn't have a teacher to tell me. So when I encountered those frequencies, I was like, oh, well, I just have to deal with this now. And it took me a minute to realize, and my team was helping me with it. You can say no. You affirm and declare what you are here for. And you do not have to engage in just any energy that shows up. Just like we don't have to engage with any human being or any being that comes into our space. And that is just so important to know on this path. And I love how you were given that very clear choice. Then you can make the choice. And then you talk about the other piece you talk about here that I really want to highlight is your assignments. Because that's something I also have experienced, and I feel very inspired by that. And I know some folks tend to, feel like, oh, I have an assignment, oh, a mission, oh, that's too much. But the truth is we all have assignments, and we're all given assignments by our spiritual team if we're willing to work in harmony with the light. So has there ever been maybe you can give us an example of assignments that you've been given that you're just like, no, I don't want to do that, and how you sort of worked through that?
Excuse me. I have actually just been released from an assignment. And it was a multi-year assignment, and it was about energy healing.
Yes.
And this in particular situation, my guides clearly told me that you're working with energy on this with this particular person, and they would not intervene. And I had to learn how to manage my beingness while having another energy field in relationship with mine. And part of the assignment was to express to the other energy what their overall assignment was. And part of my lesson was learning to move past the fear of sounding crazy and telling this other person what their assignment was. Once I realized that was the overall lesson about addressing my own fears, I was able to express that with freedom and clarity, and then the assignment was closed.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. And that is a big thing that those of us who choose to be in the world, but not of it, those of us who have chosen the highest light path, that is something we have to face. And may I say kindly, get over this fear of like, what are other people going to think? How is this going to appear to them? And really that is its own, like you just demonstrated, its own assignment to really be able to get over that. I've had that every expansion point. I've been like, oh, I can't be this weird. And my spiritual team is, we assure you, you can. And you can have, this is exactly what you came to do. So I love that you gave that illustration, because it is such an important piece for all of us to really face those fears. And I see, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, I see a lot of healers, because that's really, who I'm here to serve, creatives, healers, writers, artists, and they are too afraid. They're too afraid to be seen. They don't want to be seen as being too whatever. So they tamper down their gifts, and they do not live the fullness of their experience. They are not living happy, fulfilled lives. I've seen it happen so many times. And I just want to keep reiterating, like, take the assignment, say yes, do the hard thing, allow yourself to be that weird, air quotes around weird, like really let yourself go all in for this path, because it is the most rewarding, in my humble opinion, or not so humble opinion, the most rewarding way to be on this planet.
Yes. Yes. I realized that at some point during this whole experience that I've been having is that part of my own personal lesson was to identify my own construct of the ego and how it was standing in the path of me stepping into the fullness of the assignment, right? And so sometimes I wonder if part of the journey for those of us who are here as spiritual teachers and healers, etc., is to address that part, right? If they're not stepping fully into their whole assignment. Because my ego personally would always say, I don't know what, I don't know anything. Who am I to say these things? I'm not qualified. I can't tell people things. That was the voice of my own ego, right? So that was my soul lesson while I was here. Once I was able to identify that voice, my own specific egoic voice, that construct, and realize that it is standing in the way of me showing up, then I was able to kind of like gently move it to the side when I heard it and step fully into who I am. So now I'm not afraid to look strange, right?
Yes.
And now I know what I'm speaking about, because little me, is not doing it. Spirit is doing it through me. I've created that space for myself so it can express itself. So of course, I have to somehow learn to assist that part of me that's living in fear, that's living in not worthy enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. I have to learn to gently tip it to the side so all of spirit can come in and express for the assignment. So, if there are any healers or teachers that are listening, just gently look at a voice that's saying, you can't do this. That's not spirit. And you can gently just tell it, it's okay. It's all right. We're still going to do this.
Yes.
Because spirit is really the one that's in charge.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. And I say that often, if you're hearing those voices, that's not the divine, that's not your intuition, that's not your higher self. I love that you highlighted that. I want to go a little bit back in this story, because there's another piece here that I think is so valuable. You had this big shift, this awakening, and then at some point you got pulled back into the J-dubs, as I call them, that the organization, that religion, you got kind of pulled back to that. Can you talk a little bit about what happened there? And often I see these things as we just have more, a little more cleanup to do before fully disengaging, but I'd love to hear about your perspective from that, because this is something that happens for folks. They set themselves free, they might get scared, they get triggered, or there's more cleanup to do, and then they have to go, for lack of a better term, sort of back to whatever to be able to fully complete it before leaving it for good. So could you share a little bit about your experience with that?
Sure. My actual story, because I was raised in the organization, as they call it, and I actually left when I was around 18. Something out of the blue, I just decided that I wanted to be a model. And
Yeah.
so out of nowhere. And so, I told my mom, she called the elders, and he said, you can't do this and serve Jehovah. And I said, well, I guess I won't serve Jehovah then. It was that simple. It was that clear.
Yeah.
And I moved out of respect for my mom, not living in her house and not going to the meetings. And I stepped out into the world. I was out for 4 years and I was doing pretty well. But because I had, been so sheltered as a child, I didn't have all those tools. And this is part of growing up in that world where you're not given the tools to survive the world. So you automatically run back to it, right? So I'm 21, I go back in, I think the world is horrible, Armageddon is coming, I need to feel safe. I entrenched myself back in the organization for the solid 20 years, which that was when I was going through the depression. right? And then I started to wake up within the organization and just started looking around and just like, what is going on and why do I feel this way? Why do I feel sad? Why do I feel upset? Why do I feel confused? And why is it if I take a week off from the meetings, I actually feel better?
Yes.
Okay. And so
Yes.
that pattern started, and I had a wonderful friend who had actually left quietly many years ago. And I had reached out to him and I was just, venting about the organization and how I feel and I don't understand. And he just quietly said, maybe you don't need that much control.
Mm. Mm.
And that was the light bulb.
Yes.
And I did not hesitate to leave. It was, I'm
Mm.
out.
Mm.
Goodbye. I'm
Mm.
done. You
That's what
know,
you needed. Yep.
that's what I needed. That was the clarification, the understanding of this is what it is that's making me feel this way, the controlling aspect of the organization. And so I pretty much left in a blaze of fire.
Yep.
Um, and it was very shocking to a lot of people. And I know my family at the time, it was just a lot for them, and I didn't say anything as far as why I was really leaving. I just know didn't need to be there.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I didn't go back in afterwards. I was really pretty much done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
by 11. Yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
so much for clarifying that. And I'm just totally like in awe, Deb, of how much our stories are similar, because I left the religion at 17, that went back at 19, and then was in it like really intensely. And then once I finally left, it was like done, done, done. So this is so important because, religious abuse, we could call this all different kinds of things, but those of you that have been J-dubs in the past, and I know there are many of you out there, like, what we're talking about at this level of control in that religion. And, I remember my grandmother telling me like, well, you're going to die in Armageddon. And like, because I was leaving and I was very clear about I was leaving. And so to break free from a control mechanism like that is so huge and profound. And I really believe Deb set us up for these spiritual awakenings. It was like one of the initiations, of being in that kind of controlling religious environment, and then having to break free of the dogma, the control systems, the family, right? That is very like, like my family didn't talk to me for years. In fact, my grandparents died without talking to me again. So it was like 9-10 years, just complete being ostracized by my community, people that I had loved and grown up with, acting like they didn't know who I was when they saw me in the grocery store. Like, this is abuse. And when you break free of something like that, what it's really been so huge for me to see is like, that was just an initiation, because then you got to break out of the other control systems that are here on earth, and breaking free of religious one is a huge initiation.
I totally agree. And I didn't realize this until I actually saw other people and how they were breaking free in their experiences afterwards. The construct of religion in general is a huge one because its underlying foundation is to help people, right, to recognize their divinity. But the ego is so entrenched in it that it cannot happen. It just cannot happen. And when you wake up within something like that and you see it and you break free from it, that is huge. Because then you look at everything else and you see the constructs. And
That's
then you
right.
start to break them all apart. And then what are you left with? That's the beauty. It's like, what am I left with? And that was my process coming out of JWs, right? Was to completely remove everything I believed in and just sit literally for like
Yes.
months. And like, I don't believe anything. I'm just going to observe,
Yes.
right? Go through the process of, well, I kind of believe there is something, but it's not here. Or maybe there isn't anything. And so I allowed myself just to naturally discover what this is without having any kind of attachment to the previous journey. And I know that's not everybody's experience. I know that religious trauma, people come out of it and God, this idea of God is horrible. and they're angry, and I get that. But I think giving myself the opportunity just to sit and just, I say, I don't know anything,
Yes.
right? What's going to show up, and allowing that to show up, I think really helped me to be open enough to accept a lot more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is such a powerful process, what you're describing for any of us at any stage in your awakening. When 2020 hit, I had my sort of next level awakening over, the storyline I had been telling about the control structures in the country that we inhabit. And I had to sit there and just go, I don't know anything. Everything I thought I knew is BS. So now what? And that's a powerful practice, what you just described, Deb, to just go sit in meditation. I don't know anything. My spiritual team talks about going back to beginner's mind. Anytime I start like a certification program or do something like that, we share this with everyone, and, just, I don't know anything. Let's just go back to that beginner's mind. And that is such a powerful practice to just, I don't know anything. I'm going to sit in meditation and see what naturally arises. What wisdom, Deb, that you did that coming out of such religious trauma. Like, that is huge.
But I think that's just part of our nature, right? But again, we're in this constructed experience, layers and layers of construct. We're not given the opportunity or even taught to just sit, right? Just sit and observe, and not form an opinion about something. Just watch.
Yes.
And just see what reveals itself to you. Even with people, I love that I've learned over the years to cast or just put my judgments to the side and just observe people, and then ask these questions like, well, what happened to that person for them to do those things? Because if I know that I am the divine having a physical experience, that person also is too. But do they know that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think just giving ourselves the opportunity to just sit and breathe and just observe and just like feel what we're feeling when we're observing things, and ask ourselves, why am I feeling this feeling in my body while I'm observing something out there?
Mm-hmm.
That, I think, pulls things apart within us, so we can like even go deeper and deeper and see who we really, really are. Right. And see
Yes.
who people are. And it's just something that I think part of my guides have kind of helped me to kind of like just experience and embody. And I'm very grateful that I can do that, because it actually helps me live life much more peacefully, and just with gratitude and grace for other people too.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I absolutely love that. And that leads perfectly, Deb, into one of the questions we asked all of our guests, which is, how are you co-creating the golden age at this time? And how do you recommend, or what encouragement do you have for those who are listening on how to create their golden age? Because you said that living a peaceful life and gratitude and grace, like, how delicious is that? That is the golden age right there. So tell us a little bit more, Deb, about your process at this point and your practices at this point that you feel called to share, that you might encourage others to also step into.
So I would say that for me, how I'm contributing to the golden age is that I have over time increasingly developed a desire to surrender, right?
Yes.
Inside of me, inside of everyone, is this beautiful expression of the divine. And all it wants is to express its love, its beauty, its light, its information, right? It wants to enjoy this parasitic, beautiful planet that we live on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do I allow that to happen? I do whatever work, and it's mainly meditation, to bring myself into stillness, into openness, into surrender, so that that light has full access of my body, so that it can express love and truth and light to people. Anything that comes up, I surrender it to healing. So I will even in my meditation because I think when you do a lot of work, I think you're healing backwards to the first point of wounding. And if you can get to that point, there's still stuff there. There's still stuff there. I call them the unhealed wounds that stand in the way of that light. And so even in my meditation, I go deeper and I speak to that inner space and I say, if there's anything left that needs to come up for healing that I am unaware of, it is done. So for me, meditation offers me that space to sit with the divine and to say, this physical experience called a body named Debbie, it is yours to use however you feel necessary. And I allow that to be the navigating force. And so because of that, the agreement is my life is soft. It's a soft life. It's an easy life. The abundance flows, the joy flows. My relationships are healthy and they're strong and they're good. I meet wonderful people. And I even get a chance to be directed to people who need help. I don't seek things. Whatever needs to be addressed, I will be moved towards it. And I always know. So I think surrendering, allowing space for divine to flow in meditation or yoga, whatever practices that will open up the body is very important because it creates a space, like I said, for divinity to come in and express itself and help other people step into this wonderful age that we are already there, right?
Yes.
It's just recognition of it.
Absolutely. Beautiful. And you did such a just eloquent, gorgeous job of demonstrating with your words what being spirit-led is. So I'm going to highlight these pieces for those who are listening. You might want to write this down if you haven't already. So Deb's recipe, as it were, to the golden age, I'm just pulling some pieces out from our time together today. And meditation, sitting and observing, getting curious about what you're experiencing and observing, affirming that you live a peaceful life with gratitude and grace. And then the surrender piece is so huge. Let the divine express through you. And Deb doesn't just make that intention and then that's it. She's done. She did it one day. She affirms it and comes back to it repeatedly to make herself available for the divine to express through her. I love that so much. The other piece I have here is affirm when stuff comes up, as life will bring it, you surrender it to source, and then you affirm that it's done. Remembering that your word is your wand. Thank you, Florence Scovel-Shinn, right? Like this powerful metaphysical practice, your word is creation. And so Deb is really demonstrating that. And I love that reminder for all of us. And she calls it the soft life, where she's essentially affirming goodness every single day, allowing herself to be directed to the divine, to where she's meant to serve, to whatever it is that her next assignment is. What a beautiful way to co-create the golden age. And I would say, one of the best ways. I love this. It's such a yummy way to live.
And I can add one more thing.
Yes, please.
As a child of the divine, please play.
Yes.
Play.
Yes. Talk to us about that. What are some ways that you play?
Oh my goodness. I am like a child in the forest, giddy. Play, be in nature, be curious. Like you said earlier, be curious. Look at the world and wonder. Touch the trees, touch the grass. Do not be afraid to be strange.
Yeah.
Do not be afraid to be strange. Laugh, skip, swirl in the open. Just be an expression of the divine, because other people need to see that.
Yes.
To know it's okay.
That's right. Absolutely. I love that, because you're really, when you give yourself permission, then you're also giving others permission. Just like in your story, when that former, J-Dub was like, maybe you don't need that level of control in your life. And that was it. That was like the permission, the clicking it into place. Someone seeing you twirling and skipping and touching the trees, or, for me, I'm like talking to spirit while I'm on my walks, like that gives them permission to also be more fully who they really are. Because this whole construct that you wouldn't be in nature, that you wouldn't be laughing, skipping, twirling, talking to the divine, that's the sickness. You know, this is our original nature. What we're talking about here today is our original, it's our true self.
Yes, it is. Run barefoot in the grass, run in the rain. Who cares? Have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. Deb, this has been amazing, as I knew it would be. I'm so happy we finally did this. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom to us and having this conversation and getting to connect in this way. How can folks stay connected to you, stay in touch with you? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, if they would like to find me, I do have a little blog, right? And it's called vivadivine.blogspot.com. And they can find me there. And, you know, I'd love to connect. I love to meet people and I love to love on people. So yes, let's keep the conversations going.
Amazing. And I'll put that link in the show notes as well. Thank you again, Miss Deb. So happy to have you here with us. This was absolutely incredible. Thank you to all those who are here with us today and who are listening. If this podcast episode was of benefit to you, please consider forwarding it on to someone you know who is also on their awakening journey, or making a gift or a donation in the amount that your spirit guides you to. You can go to sacred-spirituality.org, click on the podcast button to get all of the details there. It provides us the ability to bring you this high vibrational content in this format. Thank you again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christian Strang, and this is Awakening, the podcast.